Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. One thing that I get asked quite often and get the most kind of emails and things about is what can you do with kind of a whole background stamp or a stamp that fills up the whole page. So I have this one here. This is called Stitched Poppies from Woodware, and it has kind of a whole lot of textury things in the background. It has some words and numbers and things down the bottom, and then it has these gorgeous poppies that are kind of the center figure here. Now obviously one of the most obvious things to do would be to just stamp and color this in, and that is a really good option if you are keen on coloring. And I guess you could use, colored pencils, or you could use alcohol markers or watercoloring or anything like that. However, that's probably not my preferred method. I'm more of a kind of go all in and do a little bit more sort of cutting and snipping and mixed media and those kinds of things. But I am going to be using a watercolor set today. Now you can definitely just use your ink pads and smush them down onto an acrylic block and then smush your background into it, but I am just creating a background here, very plain and simple. I am using the Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock. This is definitely one of my favorites. I'm going to wet the entire piece of cardstock first and then kind of just build up layers. Of course, if you already have a background lying around, then this is going to work out perfect, and you might just have to do the second step of this instead of having to create a background as well. But definitely I tend to have a few backgrounds hanging around that are a little bit plain or a little bit too something, just not right for whatever project I was doing, and so this would be a good one to be able to do on top of those. And I also do think it's really important to kind of use what we have, and then sometimes you will have backgrounds available that you are able to do this on. Sometimes you'll need to make some, sometimes you'll have the products that I have used in a video, but honestly I think my more comfortable technique here would be to do ink smushing and just use my Distress Oxide inks for this, but I decided to challenge myself just that tiny bit and use watercolors, which I am super unfamiliar with. So I kind of created a background out of blues and blacks and things. I just wanted kind of a grey, muted tones kind of background. And then I want a really, really bright kind of red, leaning towards the darker side of red. So I am going to pop a little bit of black and things in there. And these are obviously going to be for the poppies because we are going to be doing some paper piecing today, which is one of my favourite techniques in card making. So I have kind of put down a whole lot of colour and a whole lot of water splashed over top. This piece obviously I'm going to be cutting out, so I'm just going to dry it and then add some more colour on top of this just to get the look that I'm after. I'm after kind of lots of texture and things. You could definitely go ahead and stamp this with some stamps, some tone-on-tone stamping, so either put a little wash of the watercolour over your stamp and stamp it, or if you had an alcohol marker, or if you had some inks that matched, just anything. You could honestly go for gold, and this is a really fun technique when you're paper piecing because at this point you don't have to stick within any lines or any kind of rules. So I know it looks like a little bit of a hot mess and you're kind of wondering what's going to happen with this piece here, but I promise it will all turn out okay, and I do really love this card in the end. Now here is the first piece. Again, I'm going to move around these big drops because, as I said, this is going to add some really nice texture, and it didn't look at all like I wanted it to look at this point, but it is important not to give up and just to keep trying, keep giving it a go, change up some things. And because this is watercolor cardstock, I have the ability to add lots of layers and add lots of water and move things around, all the whilst knowing that I'm not going to ruin my cardstock and ruin my piece that I've already put so much effort into. So I'm going to put on some splashes and just some little lines, and it kind of looks like a bit crazy at the moment, and you think, is this really going to work for a background? Watercolors do dry back quite a lot, so that's really important to remember. A little bit like the Distress Oxides inks, I think that they dry back a little bit, maybe not quite as much as watercolors, but here I did want lots and lots of texture, and one good way to achieve this also is to keep drying things in between layers. So now that I have my background complete and I have my red piece that I want to stamp my poppies out on, I'm going to pop the entire background stamp on top of it. I'm using a stamp platform just because I wasn't sure how this was going to stamp. I haven't stamped this one out before, so it's fresh out of the packet, and I just want to make sure, especially since I've already put the time and effort into creating the background. I'm going to use some VersaFine Onyx black ink, and this is going to be quite kind of stark and dark, and it's definitely not a subtle look. So I am going to rub this all over. I actually do have a little stamping tool thing there under my palm, and that helps a whole lot. I have a few different ones of those that I'm using at the moment, and am happy to do a little bit of a video kind of showcasing them a little bit more. If that's what you're after, I have a few different types that I've been using behind the scenes and just kind of trying out. Now I'm going to switch over to the red piece that I did. Again, this is on watercolor cardstock, and I just did that because I was using watercolors and there was going to be lots of water involved. Now I actually didn't stamp that bottom poppy very well at all, but I am going to be able to fix that up because I use my platform. I can just pop it back in and re-stamp it again. And I also missed one of the tiny little poppy heads, but I'm going to fix that up later. And then here is where I'm actually, just because the colors are next to each other on the color wheel, I'm able to put the green on top of the bluey kind of grey, and I'm not going to get any sort of mud, so I'm just doing some very not fancy coloring in here for the leaves of the poppies. And again, I'm just kind of dipping in between a couple of different greens. Honestly, as I said, coloring is not my forte at all, so you shouldn't be put off by kind of stamps like this where you feel like you might have to do some sort of coloring, because I feel like you can get away with it, and I'll show you a couple of little tricks towards the end of this video that are going to make it much easier and kind of disguise all of that work that you've done that you're not 100% sure about, because I always feel like that when I do any type of coloring. I always feel unsure about it. I mean, it looks okay, but I never feel confident about it. But as I said, we do what we can do, and I just do this because I enjoy it. So here I'm going to fussy cut out these little poppies. Now this is a couple of the kind of closed heads of the poppies, and I have a couple of those, and just so I remember which ones are going where, I'm going to place them down on my background just with those little heads so I don't get them mixed up. And then the others I'm just going to fussy cut out quickly. These are really nice, easy shapes to fussy cut because they actually just have smooth edges, so it makes it nice and easy. I have currently lost my little cutter bee scissors, which is making me not really excited about fussy cutting. The ones that I'm using in this video are the smaller Tim Holtz ones, but honestly the cutter bee ones are definitely my favorite for fussy cutting, and it makes such a big difference. So I will really need to have a hunt for those. I'm also going to go around the edges as I always do when I do fussy cutting, and I have a black stamped outline, and I'm going to take a brush marker and go around the outside here. Again, this is one of those tips that honestly, if you are fussy cutting with a black stamped image, give it a go and you will see that it makes your fussy cutting look a whole lot better. So you can see all I'm doing is I come from the back, and that means it doesn't matter if I kind of miss or I scribble or my pen moves down a little bit. And so, but definitely come in from the back and go right around the edge of your whatever you are fussy cutting or whatever you have fussy cut, and this will make it look 10 times better. Now this is the Lunar paste, and this is the Slippery When Wet color, and I am not going to lie, I pretty much use this straight for gold splashes. This is the best product that I have found for this. I am loving it. I'm sure there are lots of really good uses for it, but I bought it mainly for doing splashes and flecks, and it dries so gorgeous and shiny. So that is the perfect thing for doing splotches here, and I'm not being careful. I'm getting it all over the flowers. There's some really big marks there that I don't love either, and that's okay because we're going to be covering them all up. That's why I'm doing it now and not later. Then I have a little bit of Dylusions acrylic paint. This is the white picket fence, I think it's called. I've had it forever, and honestly this is really good for splashes, but you can either use a little bit of gesso, white gesso if you have it, or any white acrylic paint, anything that you can water down a little bit and do some splashes. Again, you can skip that step completely as well. We are coming near to the end of the card. I'm going to trim this down a little bit because I decided for this card I would have a really big, thick white border. I am very much a fan of borders in general. I definitely usually go for like an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/4 of an inch, but for this one I decided to go really thick, and because I also decided to have a big white border, I'm going to round off the edges. You could just round off 2 of them like on opposite sides, but I decided for this one I would round out all 4, and just for a little bit something different because I don't often do this, and I just think it kind of softens the card a little bit. And this is where it all starts coming together, and I love this part of card making. So I am going to pull back all 4 little pieces of my tape and have them all sticking out the sides, as well as that one in the middle. That means I can line it up perfectly. When it's all lined up, I press that little exposed piece of adhesive in the middle, and then I pull out all 4 tabs, and it is perfectly even on my card base. Then I'm going to use some liquid glue. This is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish in this glue bottle. If you want to know how I get the glue into these bottles, then I have a very short video on YouTube. Just search how to fill a glue bottle and it will be the first one that comes up. It's a really stress-free and mess-free way of getting the glue in there. But I am just popping on all of these gorgeous poppies, and then this is the part that is going to make it look absolutely gorgeous. So I am going to put on some glossy accents onto the top of these poppies, and I'm putting a relatively thick layer on all 5 little poppies, and then just down the bottom on the leaves I'm going to put a very, very thin layer, so nothing like the poppies, because I want those to be the absolute standout feature. You could also sprinkle in a little bit of iridescent glitter or something like that at this point if you wanted to, but I'm going to show you this when this is nice and dry. So this is how it goes on wet, and it's a little bit cloudy, but then here is where it's going to be absolutely gorgeous, and I love how bright red those poppies have come out. That was my card for today. I hope that you guys have enjoyed paper piecing together a whole background stamp, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you then. Bye.